The Pteranodon is one of the biggest pterosaurs. One of the most iconic traits is the protruding skull crest. Its solid and sharp beak is particularly dangerous.
Well folks, that was the Pteranodon species profile. We're going to take a look at that in depth, and then as per usual we're also going to take a look at the forum post to see if there's any new information we can glean from that. It is worth mentioning this is a slightly more chill week. We got all our big revelations about the aviaries last week, so this week it's more just showcasing the Pteranodon itself and some new animations we hadn't seen before. And it is, of course, our best look at the Pteranodon in action. We're going to talk about the stuff happening at the bottom in the next scene, so let's ignore that for now, as cool as it does look. But, we get to see the Pteranodon in action. It is, of course, the Jurassic World variant. I believe the justification is they're all female, so they've all got this much shorter crest. We've got this sort of red, slightly plasticky feeling texture over the top of the body, and then the sort of grey underbelly, just like in Jurassic World. There's a little bit of odd movement going on here. You can see the Pteranodon begins to turn to the left. It's a little bit jolted at the moment. You've got to remember this is still all a little bit early on in development. And the Pteranodon keeps looking to the right, so maybe we've got a system in here wherein there are points of interest around the aviary and the Pteranodons are able to spot them out. The aviary creatures are able to focus on them. That was kind of a thing back in Jurassic World Evolution as well. There isn't much else to say about this first clip, folks. It's just a nice look at the Pteranodon. Looks good, looks like the Jurassic World version. I'm not a big fan, as we know. It's got that slightly pelican-esque mouth. We've got this quite nice looking texture on the wings. You can just about grab it as the wings flap upwards. You can see these striations, these scratches and marks all the way across that sort of leathery looking texture. And we get a nice look at the aviary itself once again. We can see this big pool of water, we've got rocks, we've got trees, a nice varied environment that of course you yourselves will be able to build and develop. This second clip though is of course much cooler. We get to see the Pteranodons feed from the fish feeder, which seems to be placed down exactly the same way as the fish feeder in Jurassic World Evolution. We talked about this last week. Just to clarify, I did mention it in my video, but I had so many comments about it. There are no insectivore feeders, it is just a fish feeder. And maybe all of our pterosaurs are going to be fish fed. You never know, but maybe we'll get some, as Darkids, some larger pterosaurs that would use the typical meat feeder. We do see some pretty cool little animations here though. We see the one on the left, it's landing down, about to begin chowing down. We see the full animation of the one on the right hand side. It's actually a better look at the detail of the creature and the modelling of the creature than the last one as well. Dunks its head underwater, grabs the fish, shakes it side to side, chucks it up in the air a little bit so it can clamp its beak back down on the creature, make sure it's fully dead, not wet and slippery, as Gollum would like it, and then just, swallows it down whole. Kind of, again, like a pelican. It's just a cool animation. We don't see any variation in that animation. Of course, the second Pteranodon comes in, lands on a different position. It looks like you'll be able to have 4 Pteranodons feeding at the same time. We do see a pretty cool little animation in the top left. Now, the transition, I would say, is a little bit janky. It kind of like rears back, but then we see this dive bomb sort of move from this Pteranodon in the top left corner, and it looks like it's diving down not towards the feeder but towards the hatchery. And if you actually look at the hatchery, which has been placed on that back wall there, then it's kind of got another Pteranodon already sitting on it. So maybe the one on the left is going in to socialise, or for, given the anger it's moving with, more like a territorial dispute or something like that. It's pretty cool that the pterosaurs can land on the hatchery though. We already know that they can fly around your park and land on objects other than the ground and, just flying around themselves, but this is the first time we've seen a pterosaur land on an actual building that you yourself will be able to place down. They could also be automatically placed when you build your aviary, we don't know quite yet, but either way, it's landing on a building, it's landing on part of the world that you have created, which is cool. And then finally we see a breakout. Now we don't see the breakout itself unfortunately, but we do see a Pteranodon flying off into the sunset, over the park, over the aviary. And of course this doesn't mean it'll fly off into the distance like in the past. It won't fly off to the moon. It's not going to pull an Elon Musk. But it is going to explore the park and attack things and, form a new territory and stuff like that, and land on buildings and etc, etc. So I'm really excited to see the rest of this play out. What's it going to look like when your pterosaurs break out as a group and they go and they take over a region of your park. It's like some hooligans around the corner. It sounds like a really cool system. I just want to see it in action. It's interesting to me that the, I don't know if it's just because there's been like lots of breakouts or something, but if you look at the aviary, you can see that the left, the middle and the right all have missing segments. And as the clip comes to an end, if you look at the far right, there's actually a fourth gap in the wall of the aviary. There's gaps all over the place and your pterosaurs can then flood out. What will be interesting is whether we actually don't know this yet, I don't believe. Can pterosaurs actually force their way out, or just like in Jurassic World Evolution 1, do they need a pre-existing disaster, a pre-existing event to break the aviary in the first place to allow them to escape? So as per usual, let's take a quick little look at the forum post. A piscivorous flying reptile, Pteranodon was one of the largest flying reptiles, with wingspans of up to 7 meters. Though primarily piscivorous, they just want me to say piscivorous. Piscivorous? Piscivorous. I'm going to go piscivorous. The Pteranodons of Jurassic World Evolution 2 can be aggressive, especially when outside their aviaries. Like other pterosaurs, Pteranodon was a strong flyer with a large breastbone, reinforced shoulder girdles, delicious, and muscular attachments on the arm bones, all of which point to a powerful body and a large amount of maneuverability, like an elephant on a skateboard. That is a joke crafted for the 3-year-olds in the audience. Their relatively large and bulky bodies make sustained flight difficult, which is exactly what we heard for the Dimorphodon, but kind of the other way around. And you'll see them perching inside their aviaries when they need a nest. And we already saw that. We saw them perching on the hatchery in the aviary video just a second ago, and we've seen already that aviary creatures will be able to perch down on the ground. We still don't know, but fingers are crossed for like a placeable item or something that they can perch on and take a break. Maybe a tree, maybe trees with like particularly big branches. That would be really cool as well. Pteranodon is a social animal and can get somewhat aggressive if they don't have other members of their species nearby. So, keep all these in mind for when you actually get the game in your hands. Make sure you're releasing several Pteranodons. Make sure to account for this when planning out your aviaries so they can keep each other company. You will also need a fair amount of space for them to spread their wings, preferring a mixture of open space and wetlands environments surrounding them. Historically, Pteranodons lived in a coastal environment, which is the motivation behind the high need for a wetland environment. So as we've seen with dinosaurs that need sand as a requirement, which is pretty cool, it seems that wetland has been expanded as well to account for more species other than just the Spinosaurids. Your Pteranodons, since they like coastal, moist environments, you're going to have to moisten your habitats here in Evolution 2 as well to keep them happy. It's cool, it's going to make exhibit building a little bit more restricted in a little way, but that in turn I think increases creativity and will make exhibit building a little bit more interesting when you do actually have to account for a lot more than just forest, which is basically all you had to account for in the past. As with their cousin Dimorphodon, they'll start to expand their territory into the rest of your park if they manage to break out their aviaries. They may also start taking swipes at the guests, so make sure you open up those shelters to protect your visitors from any and all attacking dinosaurs. This is interesting phrasing to me. They may also start taking swipes at the guests. Now, we already knew about this, of course. We knew pterosaurs could attack our guests, which is really cool. However, they've been very careful with the wording, and when we first heard about this, Andrew Rayner's article, I believe it was, he couldn't confirm that Pteranodons could attack guests, but they were going to cause havoc. Or they would attack, but they wouldn't necessarily kill. I'm not 100% sure your Pteranodons will be able to kill your guests. I hope they can. I think they should be able to. I don't know. The wording is... maybe I'm reading into it a little bit much, but it's not the first time this wording has thrown me for a loop a little bit regarding this. Wait and see. The Pteranodon is a familiar face and a Jurassic World staple, and we'd be remiss not to include them in Jurassic World Evolution 2. We think both you and your guests will enjoy viewing these fascinating creatures as they soar through your park's aviaries and when they take over your actual bloody park. Will you be bioengineering them for your parks? Let us know in the comments. I want there to be someone who just says no every week. I will only make Mutaborosaurus and nothing else ever. So a very chill week this week. We saw some cool new animations. We saw the fish feeding. We saw what it's going to look like when your aviary is broken out of. There isn't much else to talk about beyond that. We'd seen the Pteranodon in detail before. However, this does further establish a pattern that I'd very like to quickly talk about. I believe the species profile order has gone Triceratops, Amargasaurus, Brachiosaurus, Coelophysis, Stegosaurus, Dimorphodon, Pteranodon. I think that's correct, and this is our 7th profile so far. Now what you may realise looking at that profile order is it's gone old, new, old, new, old, new, old. It has kind of started to establish itself as a pattern. Now, people were talking about this a few weeks ago, we had to wait to see if it developed further, but with 7 examples, all of them fitting the pattern, that's pretty cool. That means maybe, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up because it could just be a coincidence. You know, it could happen, it seems unlikely at this point, but it could be. But it seems like if we're going to get a species profile next week, species field guide I should say, it's likely to be a creature that is new to Jurassic World Evolution 2. Either way, so not the most hype species field guide we're ever going to see, but nice little update, cool to see some stuff. I wish it to show a little, I'd love to see them attacking the guests, I'd love to see them roosting around the park, little details like that that would be really cool to showcase. I think they could maybe push these field guides a little bit more into showing us some stuff on these more like low-key weeks. Hope you've enjoyed the video. We'll of course be back later this week, but also next Wednesday for hopefully more species field guides. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think about the Pteranodon in the comment section down below. Are you going to bioengineer this creature, release it into your park? Let me know. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you lovely folks next time. Cheers myself as always. Bye-bye.
Reaching out.